I'm sure that there isn't a dry eye in this room, but I'd like to introduce Charlotte Rodriguez, series director from 72 Films, Alex Nicholson, and also Peggy Simpson, who is going to be featured in one of the episodes coming up. I want to congratulate you first for dealing with such a sensitive subject so respectfully and for incorporating such powerful historical imagery and interwoven with the interviews of the subjects. I would like to ask you though, how did you approach this very difficult subject and focusing on one day in America here in Dallas?
Well, we wanted to, it was very much about our interviewees, and we knew that 60 years on, it would be maybe the last time that we would record this. So it was very much led by an immersive perspective. We wanted it to be first-hand witnesses who were there on that day, and we wanted to sort of see it through their eyes and to be taken back there with them in a very emotional way. And we wanted to explore the kind of human experience of it, rather than the sort of conspiracy theories, or we wanted to sort of feel like we were living it and not being taught it, that we were with those people at that time, and being very much sort of transported back, and then obviously interweaving the archive with our contributors and connecting them and actually being able to see them in the archive, I think made it feel a lot more personal and intimate.
Well, even here in Dallas, many of us have relived the moments. If you were here in Dallas in 1963 and here at the Sixth Floor Museum, we're never desensitized to this very heavy topic. And it's been a privilege to meet all the people who've been part of this story and are still willing to share their stories. I forgot what I was going to ask. I want to congratulate you also because really this was an emotional roller coaster of emotions, joy, excitement, sorrow, and a sense of a very deep, ominous feeling that you've captured very well. How did you approach the colorization of the footage? Because most of us are very familiar with the black and white images that have been put into documentaries, and I think this has been one of the momentous shifts in presenting this material.
I think we were very keen to colorize as much material as we could in the documentary initially, because we wanted to be able to present the series and the subject matter to a younger audience and bring it to life in a different way that hadn't been seen before. And obviously the Sixth Floor worked brilliantly with us on that and believed in our vision, and I know that they were quite reticent to start with, which I totally understand, and we all understood. And I think once we put them in touch with our fantastic colorists in Paris, and they could talk about not losing authenticity in the archive, not manipulating it, that they realised what we were trying to do. And actually, when we came to edit the films, we didn't use as much colorization as we had originally anticipated. So I think we ended up colorizing 53 minutes altogether. But we realised that when we were putting the film together, some archive just lended itself better to stay black and white, and some of it we wanted to, like Jackie and her dress, for example, and there's blood on it. We didn't want to colorize that. We wanted to give that the respect it deserved. And I think also it's important to retain some of the black and white material just so that you understood that, it was 60 years ago. So yeah, it was editorial reasons. It was also some technical reasons that we wouldn't use some of the colorization because some of it just didn't lend itself so well to colorization. It just, it wasn't so well lit, or there was shadows, and we wanted it, as well as being a deeply emotional piece of program making, to look like a movie. Like, we shot it anamorphic, we wanted it to look as epic as possible. We wanted to give it high production values. So yeah, it was a combination of technical and editorial in terms of what went in and what stayed retained its uniqueness in black and white.
So I'd like to ask you, what was it like working with the Sixth Floor Museum, since our team was involved in sort of having those discussions with what to do?
It was brilliant. You guys are amazing. We sort of very quickly, thank you. It's been a pleasure collaborating. It was it was great working with everybody. I mean, you know, our archivists absolutely adored you, and it was like the kind of the help that you gave us, the information. Just, I mean, you know, you've lived and breathed this subject matter, and we felt collaborating with you kind of put that gold star kind of, you know, stamp on what we were doing. Really, really fantastic to work with. You know, it's been great, and we're, you know, very proud of what we've achieved. But I hope you're very proud of what you've achieved as well.
I think so. I can't speak for my staff, but I'm sure that they do very much appreciate having this opportunity to work with you, and we're very pleased. Now, Peggy, you were one of the few Texas female reporters here in 1963. Can you tell us a little bit about your story being here in Dallas, and how did you approach telling the news?
Well, the way the AP works is most everybody is an editor and editing stories that are given them from their members, newspapers or radio stations, TV stations, and you edit it and send it on to the larger world or to the rest of the state. When there's a big event, like a president coming to town, then everything changes. And all of us who were regular desk editors took on other roles by necessity. And so I'd worked for the AP for, I think, 2.5 years. And at that point, I was 24. And I was I was working from 10:30 at night till 7 in the morning. But my regular shift just got, you know, put aside, and my bureau chief, Bob Johnson, said to go. I'd been going back and forth between Austin and Dallas, and he said, go meet one of your single state legislators that you met in Austin, and see if he will take you as a date to the dinner that John Connolly was giving that night for the Kennedys. Because that was close to the press. This will give us an inside look at what the dinner is going to be. I had snared some guy to invite me to the dinner, and I'd gotten my hair done and gotten all gussied up, and I still had 5 or 6 hours free. So my bureau chief said, just go watch the motorcade. So I positioned myself at City Hall and watched as the motorcade came around, and then I walked slowly back towards the Dallas Times-Herald, the former newspaper office, which is where the AP was located. Along the way, I came to 2 or 3 young women who were harassing a cop and saying, why did they go so fast? We didn't get to see him. And he said, you know, it's Dallas, and things have been happening here. And you had these placards, and you had these impeach Earl Warren billboards, and Adlai Stevenson had been hit on the back of the head, bopped on the back of the head by somebody, you know, sort of. Everybody was being called a communist. And so I just continued on. That cop didn't know anything, I'm sure. And I got to the newspaper office and went to the 4th floor where the newsroom was, and the receptionist was saying, all we know, to somebody on the phone, all we know is the president was shot. And I looked out in the newsroom, and the editor of the paper, Felix McKnight, was on a desk briefing the news reporters, and I just ran to the back where the AP was located, and my bureau chief had already sent out a flash that is the highest form of red alert saying the president's been shot, and he mentioned that it was apparently near the book depository. So I just turned around, raced out towards where the book depository was, about 4 blocks away, and embedded myself with cops. That's the shorthand version of that period.
So can you talk about being a female reporter there, and how was your news shared?
Well, I think I was the only woman with the AP. There were about 25 people with the AP at that time. I was the only woman in the Texas operation. In the most of the pictures of the people in the jail, or you know, in the city hall, where all the reporters were crammed in there trying to get any information they could. I'm the only woman who's visible there. I was never conscious of being the only woman, but I was with the AP, and the AP got me to, you know, have a front row seat and to insist on being in the front row. And I didn't have to say, I'm a woman, I need to be there. I was just the AP. And so it was and my bureau chief gave speeches over the next year about how I was younger by 15 years, of everybody else, but I was the only one still standing at the end of the weekend. And it was an interesting time. I ended up later being a named plaintiff in the class action lawsuit against the AP. That was about 10 years, 15 years later. And that had nothing to do, assassination was long gone. But you know, there was a woman in New York who had wanted to be a foreign correspondent. The AP had no women foreign correspondents, no women bureau chiefs, no women in management. And she kept saying, Shirley, just learn, you have to learn foreign languages if you're gonna be overseas. After she learned 6 foreign languages and they still didn't think she was good enough to be overseas, then somebody hired, the Bar Service Guild hired a lawyer, and they found out, of course, it was just, they didn't have any intention of sending women over there. So other people, she filed a class action lawsuit, and the way those things work, you go through federal bureaucracy. EEOC finally said she had probable cause, and so she lined up other named plaintiffs, and I was one of those who joined. I joined partly because of a conversation I'd had with my bureau chief about a year after the assassination, where I said, and he was still making speeches about me. I said, okay, that's fine, but what if I wanted, should I be doing anything differently right now? If I wanted to eventually have a job like yours, as being the head of the Texas AP, and what should I be doing right now, other than being an editor? What should I be learning? And he leaned back and laughed and laughed and laughed. And as I was telling somebody the other day, I was so glad it was a very dark Mexican restaurant, because I had no idea what was so funny. And he basically said, women can't do that, because I know how hard that job is. You have to drink the editor of the paper under the table, or the head of the radio station under the table, in order to sell them ads, or to sell them services, not ads. That the AP is a cooperative, and it survives by selling its member newspapers or its radio stations and services. And he said, I know you have to drink them under the table. That's what I do all the time. That's why I'm good at my job. That's why I'm the bureau chief of all of Texas. And we couldn't send a woman out to do that job, because those wives would be upset of the people you're drinking under the table. And I thought, shit, I never thought I had to compete with the wives. But you know.
Well, may I ask, how did the events of November, of that weekend, influence your future career in journalism? How has it changed your life?
I think it is a place and time that is not going to be changed. You know, it's just something. I mean, I moved to Washington in 1968. Most people in Washington had no clue that I'd covered the assassination. Most of them still don't, you know. And I didn't go and talk about it. I mean, I said somewhere along the way that, you know, I didn't think you had bragging rights because you'd covered an assassination. It was a major event that will always stand out in my career as something that I rose to the occasion and did. But you know, you go on. I mean, one of the White House reporters who was down for the assassination said, "How does it feel covering the biggest story you'll ever cover?" And I thought, at the age of 24, that's not too happy of a thought, you know.
Well, our 2 producers here and directors, you were not alive probably at the time of the assassination. So how did you approach this subject matter, and what did you learn? How has this experience changed the work that you do?
Well, I mean, I didn't actually know that much about JFK. Obviously, it's so part of the American psyche and it's ingrained. But actually, being British, it was quite interesting to have a kind of fresh set of eyes on it, I guess. But we learned a lot, I guess. I mean, there's so much. But what I hadn't appreciated is how much drama unfolded over those 3 days. I mean, it wasn't just the assassination of the president. It was the police officer, and then the assassination of the assassin. So I hadn't quite appreciated, you know, the drama and you know, the succession of drama. But yeah, I mean, I think it was also such a privilege to be able to interview all these people and all these key witnesses, because I think that they're the ones, you know, whose story it kind of belongs to, and whose story we sort of lived through, I guess. But also the archive was incredible. I mean, I hadn't also realised that it was the kind of advent of rolling live television, and the fact that it had been captured by hundreds of camera crews, which was quite extraordinary. So yeah, the fact that was all captured on television, and the fact that we saw it live, the assassination, well, the murder of the assassin is quite extraordinary as well. So yeah, but we felt very privileged to be able to interview our interviewees. Really, I think that was who we were sort of guided by, and their emotional journey, not only their physical journey but their emotional journey.
How did you decide to make your edits?
Good question. I guess it's a chronological, the franchise of One Day in America is very much following a restricted time period. So that in a way lends itself to it being kind of easier in terms of edits, and there were 3 films and we already chronologically set out. And obviously we had to share through the archive, but I suppose because we were very much led by our interviewees and their testimonies, as if we were there, we then were trying to find archive that kind of illustrated their story, and so that you felt that you were very much with them and there at the time, and living it with them all through them.
No, I think the viewers definitely feel that they're a part of the experience all along the way. What about you, Ellen?
I agree with Charlotte. I think in terms of organising the edits, as she said, there's a lot going on over the 3 days, and it kind of felt quite neatly into you've got things that are carrying you through the energy of the episodes through each of the episodes to hook people into watching the next one and the next one. And as Charlotte said, it's quite unbelievable to think that so much happened in such a short period of time. You just couldn't really make it up, could you? It was one thing after another. So yeah, it kind of felt quite neatly, I think, in that respect, didn't it, in the end? Yeah.
So had you been to Dallas before you took on this project?
Oh, I'd never been to Dallas, no. But I loved it. It was fabulous, and everyone was very welcoming, and it was quite interesting, obviously, having spent, pre-production, research, and we'd spent probably about 3 months before we actually came out researching. So it was kind of really interesting to then come here and interview people and see the places that we've been reading about in books.
Were you surprised to see so many historic structures still around?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually we went to see quite a lot more today, which was very informative and super interesting.
What else would you like everyone to know about this incredible JFK One Day in America documentary series?
My mind's gone blank. Just hope that everyone likes it, and particularly our interviewees, because as I said, it's very much about seeing it through their eyes, and it's their testimony that makes it so powerful, I think, and so immersive and emotional. I think, obviously the pacing of it is quite slow, and I think there's that was done on purpose, so that we felt that we were very much sort of being taken by our interviewees' hands, and minute by minute, as if it was happening in real time. So I hope we've achieved that. And that actually, I think it defined a lot of people's lives. It was a turning point in lots of people's lives, some more than others. I think that's really fascinating, the sort of ripple effects of what this kind of very tragic historical event, how that sort of unraveled in other people's lives. There was the micro and the macro, and it was a global event as well as a very personal event in people's lives.
Well, we know that some people in the room here, it is still a very difficult subject to address, and still deeply emotional. And I think with the generational shifts, it's really important to pass the torch on. So we're very grateful to you for making this accessible, and something that Dallas can also begin to come to grips with in a way that has been very, very challenging over these 60 decades. Sorry, 6 decades. And on with that note, I do really want to give a round of applause to the team here at 72 Films and National Geographic.